There's my good friend, Reverend Adrian Dahl. Welcome.
Hello, Sandy. Weren't we just doing something like this a few months ago?
We've talked about this.
Yes.
So we're calling this show for right now. Maybe people will give it another Faith Matters. It's kind of a little play on word that your faith matters, but there's also matters of faith. And maybe from time to time, as good friends, we'll check in on things and see what we believe about a particular holiday or topic in our own religion, and kind of, well, the conceit of the show, as I see it, is really two good friends eating at, where do we eat?
Sammy's.
At Sammy's Pizza.
Right.
And we go on to all these tangents. And before you know it, if someone was taping us, we'd have a show. That's the conceit of the show. We'll see where it ends up. I'm Rabbi Sanford AKSELRAD. I'm down the street at congregation near Tamid. And I've been there for a little bit of time as the senior rabbi. I love saying that because it's really no other rabbi, but I'm still the senior rabbi.
That's right.
And you are at Green Valley Presbyterian Church, and you're the senior pastor.
Exactly.
And so when this show appears, it's going to be during a week that is leading up to important holy days, at least in the Judeo-Christian tradition. There's a third, Ramadan, in the Muslim tradition. But right now, we're going to talk about Passover and Easter, what they have in common, and how they're different, and just some questions that I have as a Jew asking a Christian, and you as a Christian might have as a Jew, and two friends going, what are some of the earliest memories we have of those holidays? When you think of Easter, I'm assuming that's like Passover. That is a really
it's a big
cherished holiday. What are some of your childhood memories that make it special, or what you hope to create for your congregation?
You know, one of my earliest memories of Easter actually goes to the Sunday before Easter Sunday, and that is Palm Sunday, as we are celebrating the arrival of what we call Holy Week. And so I was one of the children who was waving the palms, reenacting the Palm Sunday story. And I remember singing and walking down the church aisle, going up to the platform. That's really one of my earliest Easter memories.
All right. So I have no clue what the palm in Palm Sunday means. Why is it called Palm Sunday other than you're waving a palm?
Oh, okay. So Palm Sunday signifies the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem, and he was greeted by his followers with palm branches. And as you know, palm branches were a sign of royalty, a sign of adulation. And so think of going into Jerusalem, the road would have been lined with followers, and they were saying, here's Jesus. We're so happy he's here.
And you're waving these palm, and that kind of brings back, because, and we'll get to this, but that's the whole point of Passover, is really through symbolism, we recreate memories, even if those memories are historic and have been around for thousands of years. And so that's interesting that even the waving of the palm is kind of a similar type of thing.
And I think if I could say this for both of us, there's that challenge. How do we enter the story today, right?
Right.
Because we're going to now participate in the story as we walk through Passover, as we walk through Holy Week.
That's the challenge. And so there's a lot of fun stuff in Passover for children, because the fundamental idea of Passover is that we're supposed to teach the idea of our redemption from slavery, from Egyptian servitude, and teach it to the children. And of course, children being children, they may not want to listen. And so there's all kinds of fun games. And one of the highlights is a game that occurs near the end of the Seder. So the kids really got to behave. And that is the hiding of the middle matzah, which is then known as the afikomen. Matzah is that unleavened bread that is kind of iconic for Passover, because there are some things we're no longer allowed to eat during the week of Passover. And you take that middle matzah and you hide it from the kids when they're not looking. And then at the end of the Seder, we say, we can't go home, we can't leave until someone finds it. And so all the kids go looking. And one of the memories my kids have is that the dog ate it. so no one could find it. But if you do find it, the tradition is that you ransom it. So you go to the leader of the Seder, which is the festive meal, and you go, what will you give me for this? It's called an afikomen, and they'll give you a couple bucks or $5. You might even get $20. And then, of course, if you have a lot of kids, you have to have presents for all the kids. But the one who finds it, yeah. So a lot of fun for the kids and good memories of what could be considered a long meal when you're a child. So here we are with, as I mentioned, we have the festive meal for Passover, which is called a Seder. And Seder is a Hebrew word meaning order. There's a certain order to the Seder. And what a lot of people don't know is that the Bible doesn't tell us what the order is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look. Yeah. They say we're supposed to teach the story to our children. So we know we need to include a narrative. And then by the time of the Mishnah, which is around the time of Jesus, they came up with 4 questions, the iconic question being, why is this night different from all other nights? And then we go and we talk about it, not the nights of the round table. No, the night of Passover. That's what we talk about. And then the whole point of the Seder is to answer those questions, and we do it through symbolism, through the food.
And isn't it the youngest person at the table that gets to ask the question? Why is this night different from all other nights?
That's right. So if the youngest child who can actually talk. That's right.
Youngest one who can talk, and you figure they might as well enter the story while they're still awake, right?
That's right.
Right.
So it occurs right at the beginning of the Seder, and then it's also recited, if they know it in Hebrew, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh, and it's sung to a particular melody, which I'll spare our listeners and viewers. But these melodies, again, are part of the flavor of the Seder and part of what makes a Seder fun. And when you hear these melodies of the 4 questions being sung or read, we know, it's Passover time. What would you say is kind of iconic for Easter?
You mean in terms of our religious observance, or do you mean
our cultural, religious and cultural observance? You know, for me, I'm going to think Easter bunnies and colored eggs because, you know, those are kind of the cultural things, but maybe there's religious things that, you know, every Easter when I went to church, my pastor always did ABC, and I knew it was Easter.
Well, the one thing, you know, let's just go back to this. So Passover is really at the center of our celebration of Easter. So we have Thursday night, so that's the Thursday before Easter. We do not observe a Seder. Some churches do. They will have a Seder and reinterpret it. But that says, okay, this is the beginning of now our real celebration of Easter weekend. And then you remember the sadness of this night, the night that we believe Jesus was betrayed. Easter Sunday is filled with joy because Easter Sunday signifies what? It's light overcomes darkness, resurrection, life overcomes death. So it shows us, and that is very much redemption, very much a part of the theme of Passover. And so that shows us that the price has been paid, right? So we celebrate with joy. So you and I are very much same generation, several years apart. We grew up in a day and age in this country when people still went to temple, when they still went to church. Churches used to be packed.
And wore a suit and tie when I was a kid to Sunday school, okay?
Right, yep.
Sunday school, I had to wear a jacket and tie. All right.
Exactly.
Not today.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
No, not today. What's wrong with this kid, right? Yeah, so Easter. So it always started out with you would go to church Easter Sunday morning. There was lots of music. There were lilies. Lilies signified new life there again. There were flowers. The music, jubilant music signifying the joy of the occasion. One of the things that we do in our church that I love is we put a cross outside and people bring flowers from their garden and they flower the cross as a way of showing us that life has come out of death. And so we love for the children to put the flower on the cross.
Any particular kind of flowers? That always lilies or?
No. In fact, I'm allergic to lilies, so my board knows that. Like, you have to get the lilies as far away from me as possible.
That's a thing. Allergic to the lilies. Okay.
Right. But Sandy, it's any flower that you have in your garden. It could be a lantana, it could be a lily, it could be a rose. And then
Okay, so it's again life and flowers.
yeah, we kind of cheat. We go up to Smith's grocery store. We go to the florist.
Don't
we
tell people they're watching this, Adrian. Don't tell them about cheating. They can grow in the backyard, okay?
Because some kids come and they go, Mom, I don't have a flower. We
Okay.
have one for you, right? Yeah. And
So they go into church and the music's beautiful.
Yes.
I'm assuming you have a nice choir. And is this like one of the major sermons of the year, like akin to our high holidays? That's kind of our major. I mean, you obviously have Christmas, but also I would assume Easter, the theme of He is risen, right? And
exactly
a reinterpretation of what that might mean.
Right. And so then trying to retell the story, but also telling it in a way that says, this is how it makes sense this year. So one year, if you remember the year that Notre Dame Cathedral burned,
yes,
I focused that year, my sermon was focused on the altar at the back of the basilica. And if you remember, the cross was still standing.
Wow.
And so my point was that out of the rubble of ashes of this world, that God still is all powerful.
Faith endures. Faith endures.
Exactly. And this year, I think the challenge for you and me is we can't ignore the reality of Ukraine. But how do we talk about the hope of redemption, the newness of life, life conquers death in the midst of what's happening? But we have to address it.
Well,
otherwise
that's really the story of resiliency and hope, right? Yeah. So I'm imagine if you put yourself back in history when Jesus is crucified, they would have thought their whole world ended, the whole movement ended. This their Savior ends, and then he's resurrected, and so that's hope. So in the Jewish tradition for Passover, we have this whole idea, of course, that Jews were slaves for 400 years, and Moses is born, and as he grows up educated in Pharaoh's household, but then is forced to flee, grows up as a man, as a shepherd, told by God, go back and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And we know the story of the 10 plagues. And each time Pharaoh would say, this plague is terrible, I changed my mind. No, they can't go until the 10th plague. And then the Jews leave as fast as they can. Hence the idea of matzah being unleavened, because they just had to run. So it's from slavery to redemption, because eventually the Israelites do escape. So when we look at Ukraine, and I'm not sure exactly when this show is going to happen, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen when I will be in Ukraine.
Okay.
And not in Ukraine, excuse me, I'll be in Poland.
Poland, okay.
Because I'm leaving on the 9th of April, and I'll return on the 14th, just in time for Passover. But what we're going to do while we are there, the rabbis, there's about 27 to 30 of us from all over the U.S., we actually are going to the border, and we're going to have a Passover Seder there. And the idea is that Passover really has one thing, which is to tell the historical story, but then you can apply it any way you want. And what we're doing is Putin is the modern day Pharaoh.
Right.
And the refugees are the modern day Israelites.
Right.
It wasn't that they were slaves, but it is the sense that they are searching for freedom and seeking freedom, whether it's freedom of religion or freedom to express political expression, just to lead their lives. And so we're going to do this at the border. And there'll be 200 of us. And I can just imagine when I observe my Passover this year in the United States, I'm going to be thinking about the rabbis, the new friends, the refugees, and the fact that we here in America just take so much for granted, right? We take our freedom for granted. We may have our political divides, but we get to express them, and we don't live in a society like Russia, which is not that way at all. And expressing your opinion could be at the pain of death. So Passover really is a holiday that has a central meaning, but in every age, it's kind of reinterpreted.
What I love about the Passover story is its enduring quality.
You're talking about Charlton Heston and that enduring quality of the Ten Commandments?
I'm talking about how in every generation there's that need.
The message.
Exactly. There's that need to escape tyranny.
Yes.
There's that need to escape oppression. There's that need to stand up and say, but this is who we are as a people. And so for you to identify that story as you stand on the border of Poland and Ukraine, it just moves me deeply.
Thank you.
To say that this story, this historical story, has inspired people to press on for thousands of years.
And that really is a major point about Passover. So when people say, what is the most important holiday in Judaism? Well, they might say Yom Kippur.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They should say the Sabbath, which comes every week. But the reality is, especially for American Jews, the most widely observed Jewish holiday is Passover. And in my point of view, I think Passover is the holiday practiced by more Jews than any other holiday. We may want it to be the Sabbath, Shabbat, but it's really Passover. And the fact that it's so widely observed means that the values of Passover have kept us alive. Right. Being kind to the stranger, not taking freedom for granted, belief and faith in God, being resilient, overcoming the odds to survive. And these values told again and again, whether, God forbid, it's in a concentration camp or the border of Ukraine and Poland, or whether it's in a household in Israel or America, depending upon the time, the place, where your heart is at, there will be a message of Passover that hits you in a slightly different way, but it will always be impactful.
And I think if you take the Passover story and you look at it with the Easter story, it gives people hope in the sense that there's always the chance to begin again, right? There's this story of new beginnings, of new life. As the people leave, as the Exodus event takes place, they now become a people in a new way. They have to learn, what is it like to no longer be a slave, right? What is it like to live as a free people? What is it like to live according to the ways that God says?
Well, they learn freedom isn't just free, right?
Exactly.
First thing God says is, you know what? You got those 10 commandments.
Right.
We better start shaping a civilized society. You can't just build a golden calf and do whatever you want. So there are rules and responsibilities to freedom, and we know that.
Do you find, I'm curious about this, Sandy, do you find, you just celebrated Purim, a month ago, maybe at most?
Right.
Do you find that there's an attraction to one holiday over the other?
Someone once said all Jewish holidays can be summed up this way. They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. All right. So at the core of not all, but a lot of Jewish holidays is anti-Semitism, like Purim. So they wanted to destroy the Jew. It's a biblically based holiday, as is Passover. But there's a carnival and there's dress up. So for young kids, they love it. And they get to go into the sanctuary where they're supposed to be prim and proper, and they get to make all this noise. So they love it. But Passover is different. And it's meant, we do have a Passover Seder at the synagogue, because there are people who don't necessarily have a home to celebrate it, but there are some who just don't want to do all the cooking anymore. It's a lot of work. So we have 100 to 200 who come and observe the first night with us, but it's meant to be in the home with invited guests. And that is where those memories are created. So I think a Jewish person who is an adult will have more Passover memories than they will Purim memories.
Interesting. Yeah. Because they're in the
Purim will just be, oh yeah, we had a carnival.
Right.
But Passover, they'll have stories, because oftentimes you'll have multi-generations around a table, and the meal is not necessarily short. So grandpa will chime in, and grandma, and your mom, and someone's getting into trouble, and the dog's running around, and it's a little chaotic, and it's supposed to be. And you do that every year for your entire childhood. It's going to bond the generations. That's right. And so I really think there are more Passover memories than Purim.
That's special. That's very special. Part of the reason I asked is that, it's interesting if you look at the two big holidays in our tradition. So you've got Christmas and you've got Easter. It's much easier for people to be drawn to the sentimentality of a Christmas story. Who doesn't love to hear about the birth of a child, right? We love to hear.
And you had the beautiful tree, you had presents. I love it.
We now enter Holy Week on Sunday with Palm Sunday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday. They don't even want to participate in the story. And sometimes you ask them, they say, oh, it's just too sad. I don't want to be a part of it. I just want to celebrate the joy, right? Even between Easter and Christmas, so often in America today, the brunches, the picnics, all of the festivities sort of trumps going to church and celebrating God's victory of life over death.
Well, that's what two pastors like us would probably talk about, right? Things are becoming diluted, so to speak. Like we'd rather have the Christmas tree, but not and the presents, but not necessarily understand the meaning behind Christmas or what's the meaning behind these holidays. But that does lead us into an important question.
Oh, good.
Because our producer, Leslie, said you had to talk about some of those customs, like, what was it, the Easter bonnet?
Easter eggs, Easter bonnet.
Easter eggs, Easter bonnet. Baskets. I'm trying to think of what we have in Judaism, but, we have to satisfy at least her curiosity. There's got to be other people who wonder about how did these things get started and what do you know about it?
When I was growing up, it was very common for mom to take us shopping. Dad would give her some money. I would get a new suit. My brother would get a new suit. My sister would get a new dress. And, you would wear those fancy clothes on Easter Sunday. And then, of course, mom and dad are like, don't run around in those. I just paid for that good suit, right? That's got to last you all year, right?
That's the tradition.
That's the tradition, right? And then, little girls always had those fancy little bonnets when I was growing up.
I think they made a song, right? There's a song about the Easter bonnet.
I could write a sonnet about your Easter bonnet and of the guy I'm taking to the Easter parade.
Wasn't that Judy Garland? I think an Easter parade.
Easter parade, I believe.
Yeah, Easter parade.
And, I would imagine when you were a rabbi in Columbus, Ohio, you would see people going to the big churches in downtown Columbus, and the ladies
I was there in the 80s.
Yeah.
Lived in a suburb called Westerville, and for whatever reason, people loved to stroll along the water, and they were wearing their Easter bonnets and their best clothes. And it was like, wow, I'm not Christian, but it just was beautiful and respectful that people would do that as a sign of their love for God and their faith tradition. It was beautiful.
Yeah, those are big things. I remember my dad complaining about them because he's like, these ladies wear their big hats and you can't see the preacher preaching on Easter Sunday. Or they're taking our seat and they're never here the rest of the year, right?
Oh, yeah. You hear that about major holidays all the time.
Who are these strangers? Tell them to sit in the back. They're not paying their dues.
Wow, that sounds so familiar.
It's the same church, synagogue.
They're only here at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Where did they come from? That's funny.
I think some of the traditions of Easter, and I'm sure there are those in Passover, but the Easter egg, egg there again symbolizes new life. The Easter egg hunt, I have no idea how the Easter egg hunt started. But there is
Russell Stover's, I don't know.
Exactly.
The jelly bean companies.
Right. They decided we needed another, fun holiday, right?
The candy manufacturers, right.
But that was always one of the most fun things on Easter Sunday was waking up and coming downstairs and finding your Easter basket. And then, of course, the obligatory picture in your pajamas with your Easter basket and the obligatory picture with your Sunday best before you're on your way to church.
So what's interesting is you mentioned Purim. On Purim, we have something called Shlach Manas, which is to create a basket, and you're supposed to deliver it to the poor or to a neighbor. And there's all different kinds of goodies in that. but not at Passover. Passover, though, does have the custom of welcoming the stranger. And so you're supposed to invite people, not necessarily even Jewish people, non-Jewish people, to come and sit at the meal and to enjoy festivities. And therefore, there are so many different types of seders that might go on. There could be a Black Jewish one. There could be a Christian Jewish one. There could be a social justice seder. And each of them has a different type of central theme because, again, the story has to be told, but everything around it can be told with modern day sensibilities. Well, there's like over 1,000 different Haggadahs. The Haggadah is our prayer book, 1,000 different ones.
How do Jewish people respond to churches? As you know, some churches decide to have a Seder, a Passover meal, but they celebrate the reinterpretation.
For some pastors, such as yourself, there is this notion that we need to get into the Jewish roots of Jesus because Jesus was Jewish.
Right.
So how would he have observed Passover? And therefore, we want to kind of model that aspect by understanding the values that influenced him. And so you have that aspect. And then you have the secondary, which is, my understanding is it's Jesus's Last Supper. So now you add the Christian theology on top of it. And from there, I guess you move forward on how it affected his life and his death, and therefore the start of Christianity. Would that be on point?
Yes, it would be. And so that meal, what we remember is the first Sunday of every month, we celebrate what some call Eucharist, which is Greek for giving thanks, the Lord's Supper, the sacrament of communion. We remember that event. In our church, we use matzah and we use grape juice. It doesn't happen to be Manischewitz. It's probably Welch's, but it's grape juice.
Okay.
And take the bread and the cup, just as you do at the end of Shabbat, and we remember this event, right?
Okay.
And for us, it's a holy moment as we remember Jesus giving us this. What's interesting is you talked about the Jewish roots of Jesus. I think that has been one of the incredible gifts of scholarship in the last century, is that followers of Jesus have been reminded of his Jewish roots today in a way that we were not years and years ago.
I think that as Jews and Christians have come closer together,
right,
and perhaps even in some traditions, for example, Jews and Catholics, where there has been an attempt by the two religions not only to become closer together, but the Catholic Church has forgiven some of the actions that took place historically, and there has been an eagerness to get to know one another. And that's Jews and Catholics, but Jews and other Christian denominations, that has blossomed as well.
Right.
And as that has happened, I think it's all to the good, because a lot of the values may be symbolized differently or by a different holiday, but they're there, right? If you want to say joy to the world, okay, that may be iconic, right, with Christmas, but bringing joy is something that is so important in Judaism, and we call it the Simcha, right?
So all of us should want to.
So we want joy.
Joy into this world.
You talked about the egg and a symbol of new life. At Passover, there's also an egg, and it symbolizes the exact same thing. And we have a Passover plate. We have different symbols. We might have the shank bone, which is, the roasted lamb bone that talks about the sacrifice of that night. And we have the bitter herb, the bitterness of slavery. We have parsley, which again is spring, and we dip it in the salt water, which is tears, and charosis, which is apple, kind of an apple nut mix, which represents the mortar that Jews used to make bricks for the pyramids. And you can argue whether that was historically true or not. That's another show. But then there's the roasted egg, and that roasted egg will be fertility, rebirth. So I think in the elements, there might be a light that shines. On Easter, rebirth is the central theme. And for Passover, it's a little minor theme. more welcoming the stranger and freedom are the major themes of Passover. But there's a measure of crossover, and especially, as you said, because Jesus was Jewish, so there's that
Great.
religious tie-in as well. I think we have a lot of things to talk about
We do.
over at Sammy's, and we need to shine the camera on it. But the most important thing is not only our friendship, but to remind people that faith does matter. And so it's important to talk about matters of faith. And I'm so glad to welcome you and have our friendship, and that people are watching this. I'm very, very grateful. And
It's a joy.
from my heart
I love our
to
conversation.
your heart, we say shalom. And Reverend Dahl, you get the last word. Adrian?
Well, Sandy, I would say this, that our congregation is praying for you. We prayed for you on Sunday in our services. We will pray for you again this coming Sunday as you travel to Krakow. I feel like the brother who is so proud of his brother, that I'm just overwhelmed with joy when you told me you were going. And on behalf of so many people, thank you. Because truly, just you going allows so many of us to feel as if we've done something. So thank you for allowing us to be part of that journey.
My privilege. Farewell, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much.